Hello guys, this is your friend Naruto Audio Fanfics and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is, what if Hinata and Hanabi both loved Naruto? Sakura's burning jealousy begins, Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Hinata was crying in her bed. Just a few moments ago she was branded with the caged bird seal and striped of her royal status. Hanabi had been named the next head of the Hyuga clan and boy did she rub it in her face. Her father wanted nothing to do with her, even going as far as to call her a disgrace. He was the one to initiate the sealing out of duty, but she knew he was doing this for his own pleasure. It was excruciatingly painful since the seal was meant for children so they wouldn't be too much pain, but she was 15. I told you that I will beat you and now look at you. I'm disgusted to think that you, a failure, could ever be my sister, but at least the only time I'll see you pitiful face is when you serve me food and do the cleaning around. Ha ha ha. With each word Hinata felt her heart shattering like someone took it and stomped on it repeatedly. She loved her sister very much, but the person she saw wasn't the same adorable little girl that used to look up to her for guidance and understanding. Those days were long gone and it took her till now to realize it. Hanabi had grown into an arrogant girl that was close to rivaling her father, and although Hinata did the best she could to be the mother figure Hanabi never had, it still ended with Hanabi turning her back on her. Hanabi had no idea how much she broke Hinata. She was literally the only person Hinata could talk to since she was so shy, but that has definitely changed now. Hinata would have gladly sacrificed herself to the seal if it was to protect Hanabi, but that was not the case. She was just branded out of spite. Here she was sharing a room with 6 branch family members, but at least they made her feel welcomed. The branch family members were probably the nicest people in the Hyuga compound. In some ways they still thought of her as royalty, but Hinata didn't want that. She never did. All she wanted were for all the Hyuga to be united and treated equally. When Neji arrived back from a mission, he was absolutely furious with the main family for branding her and would have done something too if she hadn't pleaded with him to let it go, but could she let it go? Hinata wanted to feel angry about this situation, but the only thing she could feel was sadness. She was sad that the situation had to escalate to this, and even though she was upset with Hanabi, she still worried about her little sister. Will the position be too much for her to take? She didn't ponder too much as she drifted to sleep. At the same time Hinata went to sleep, Hanabi was still wide awake. She just couldn't sleep. It was so irritating. Usually when she couldn't sleep, Hinata would always be there to aid her every time. Whether it being through stories or a beautiful lullaby, Hinata had a beautiful voice, and although Hanabi acted irritated with all this, she truly did feel, to a certain point, touched at her sister's kindness and love. It was only a few moments ago when she was named clan head. She felt so happy to have one-up Hinata again, like all their sparring matches. Something changed in Hinata and Hanabi didn't miss it. Besides, she kind of felt like she caused it somehow. She couldn't really tell, but Hinata's eyes became something akin to hopeless when she ripped her older sister a new one about her failures. Hanabi didn't remember much of what she said because she was basking in the afterglow of once again beating her pathetic sister at something, but the look on Hinata's face scared her a bit. It was the same look that someone who was giving up on something would give. Tomorrow she would be acting out her duties as Hyuga head by making sure everything is being run smoothly. She sighed and tried to sleep, but it was hopeless. Good morning, Hinata-sama, chorused a group of maids as Hinata made her way to her morning laundry duties. Hinata gave them a kind smile and said, "Good morning and please just call me Hinata." Hinata was different now. No longer will she be the one to let people hurt her by opening her heart and being the shy one. Naruto was an exception, but that was the only person that would have a definite place in her heart now. It didn't mean she was going to stop being kind though, it's who she is after all. Hanabi had slept a little, but it wasn't enough to escape the bags under her eyes. She felt so horrible and her body ached. The only time this would have happened in the past was when Hinata would be away on missions. She got out of bed and did her morning routine, then she decided to take a walk around the Hyuga compound to make sure that everything was fine. She was the new head after all. "Good morning, Hyuga-sama," a branch member greeted politely as he bowed. "Good morning," she greeted as she made her way to the branch family homes. She didn't know why, but she was looking for Hinata now. She told anyone who knew her that she didn't want anyone getting close to her because she was a loner, but in some way Hinata was an exception. She would never admit it to herself, but she actually wanted to know how Hinata was doing. "Do you know where I can find Hinata?" she asked a random maid. "She's most likely in the laundry room, Hyuga-sama," the lady bowed then left. It took a while to find the laundry room, but she did. She saw Hinata at a corner, folding and lining clothes as she was instructed by another woman on which clothes go where. "Good morning, Hyuga-sama," greeted another woman washing some clothes on the other side of the room. Hinata's attention was on her now too. "Good morning," she said, walking inside. "Good morning, Hinata," Hanabi greeted a bit impatiently since Hinata was supposed to be the one to greet her first since she was royalty. "Good morning, Hyuga-sama," Hinata greeted politely, but the love that she used to convey to Hanabi wasn't there. Hanabi felt like she'd been punched. It didn't matter Hinata called her Hyuga-sama instead of her name, but the way her big sister called her that title was sending red flags to Hanabi. She quickly composed herself so as not to draw attention to herself. "Are you okay?" asked Hinata, seeing the bags under her eyes. "Of course I am. I'm not like you, remember," Hanabi jabbed offhandedly. She expected to see those oh so familiar worried eyes and get those annoying questions from Hinata about her health, but what she received was not expected. Hinata glared at her. She actually glared at her, and for a moment Hanabi couldn't believe her shy and loving sister would actually do that, but this was really happening. "Then I should get back to work. Please excuse me, Hyuga-sama," Hinata said curtly and actually spat out the Hyuga-sama part before she resumed her work. Hanabi couldn't hold in her shock this time. This was definitely not the sister she knew. She could see Hinata was upset with her, but Hinata was never upset with her before, even after everything she used to put Hinata through. Hanabi hated admitting weakness, but right now she had no idea what to do. She was actually scared of saying something that would have Hinata really pissed at her. "Then I shall leave you to it," Hanabi said calmly and left the laundry room. Hanabi was walking around the Hyuga compound with a calm demeanor, but on the inside it was anything but that. Her mind was racing. It shouldn't have ended the way it did at the laundry room. Hinata didn't even look like she was interested in seeing her, and Hanabi was confused and worried. "She was upset with me. But she's never upset with me. What's going on? What happened to my sister?" she thought worriedly. She wanted to blame everything on the caged bird seal, but she would be just fooling herself. Her heart ached and she knew why, but she didn't want to admit it, not even to herself. She couldn't see Hinata again today because, truth be told, she was scared of what she might see her sister do next in her presence. "Guess we'll have to see what tomorrow brings," she thought as she made her way to her father's office to report her findings, but she wasn't going to tell him anything about Hinata though. It had been a week since Hanabi had last talked to Hinata, and it seemed that things were getting worse for Hanabi. Her father decided since she was too young to become head, she would retain her heiress status for now until she was old and mature enough to properly claim the title of head in the future. Neji would talk very little with her now. Ever since he found out about what she said to Hinata, he'd been trying to ignore her ever since. She tried to convince herself that she couldn't see Hinata because she was busy, but even she couldn't escape the fact of that being one of the most stupid excuses she's ever come up with. She was in her room now practicing kanji. Hinata always told her that practicing kanji was like a way of expressing one's emotion. If you were angry or sad, it would show on the scrolls you use for kanji. Her kanji so far just looked sad, and Hanabi couldn't hide the bitter smile as she thought of Hinata and how she was losing her loving big sister. Her thoughts were interrupted as the door opened and a young maid walked through it with new sheets and cleaning supplies. The maid noticed Hanabi and had a surprised look on her face before she quickly bowed and stuttered apologies. I am so sorry for just barging in, Hyuga-sama, please forgive me. The maid was near tears as her body shook with visible fear, and Hanabi knew exactly what she was afraid of. The caged bird seal was a seal used to control the branch families of the Hyuga compound. It can only be activated by main family members and it creates excruciating pain to the receiver. Some have even died because of being exposed to prolonged use of the seal. Hanabi knew the maid was very scared of experiencing pain and possibly dying. It all really depended on how long the pain is set as well as how strong the pain is. Usually Hanabi would be amused by this and laugh at the girl's face, but right now all she felt was numb. It's okay, you just here to do your job, right? Hanabi asked the frightened girl who looked no older than her from a closer inspection. Why yes, mistress. Thank you very much, Hyuga-sama. The girl looked 10 times happier, and for a brief moment it made Hanabi feel better about herself. The maid quickly set to work cleaning and changing the bed sheets. Hanabi was so bored now as she watched the girl clean, and before she could stop herself her mouth acted out. So what's your name? Hanabi asked. The girl looked at her surprised. Heck, she was surprised that she actually initiated a conversation with a lesser Hyuga. Akane Hyuga-sama, Akane said shyly and gave Hanabi a distinct image of a young Hinata. Hanabi shook her head to get rid of the thought, but then another thing came up that she was irritated at for some reason. You don't have to call me Hyuga-sama. You can just call me Hanabi, she said. Every single time anyone called her Hyuga-sama, it just reminded Hanabi of the conversation she had with Hinata and it made her eyes burn. Thank you, Hanabi-sama, Akane bowed politely. She was a bit calmer now, but the fear was still there and Hanabi was getting tired of it. Will you relax, Akane? I'm not going to hurt you, all right? Hanabi did her best to appear friendly, but from the terrified nod that she got as a response showed Hanabi that her methods weren't working in the least. Hanabi sighed to herself. Hinata was working in the kitchen with a few other women cooking for the many branch members, but her mind was elsewhere. The conversation she had with Hanabi wasn't a good one, but she knew she had the right to be upset with her little sister then, but her heart still ached because despite how she acted she still loves Hanabi. She was not going go begging for forgiveness though, because Hanabi would have probably told her of how weak she was and Hinata was sick and tired of that. She had always given Hanabi love and it was always thrown back in her face, so if Hanabi wanted her back as her sister then she would have to earn it this time. Hey Hinata-sama, please focus, said an elderly woman working on some soup. Hinata came out her thoughts and saw Neji making his way to her. She looked around, then realized she was in the cafeteria, absent-mindedly cooking the meat that was to be served. Hello Hinata-sama, how are you? Neji said as he approached the counter where Hinata was working. I'm fine, Neji-nisan, how are you? Hinata asked her cousin. I'm well, but you are not, he stated as he eyed her. Neji, I'm fine really, Hinata said, but cursed herself as her voice wavered a bit. Very well then. If there's anything you need, don't hesitate to ask, Neji said, clearly not convinced by her statement as he left. Hinata sighed to herself. A few weeks ago everything was alright, not perfect but alright until her father did this to her. How did things get to this? She knew how. Those arrogant Hyugas put her here because of her weaknesses. She grits her teeth when she thought of the elders of the main family. They were just power-hungry old windbags, the lot of them. It was these times when Hinata misses her mother. When she was around, everything seemed so peaceful. It was heartbreaking when she died giving birth to Hanabi, but Hinata never and still doesn't blame Hanabi for it. Great, she was thinking about Hanabi again. Work first, troubles later, she whispers to herself and gets back to work. Hanabi was confused with herself. Here she was, in her room, talking to Akane. At first it started out as just simple words just to get the nervous wreck comfortable around her, and that led up to the girl taking a sit next to her and talking about anything random she could come up with. Hanabi wasn't annoyed, however, since she had at least someone to talk to. So Hanabi-sama, what do you do for your free time? Akane asked lamely as she ran out of things to say. Will you just drop the sama already? Hanabi said, irritated a bit. Sorry, is Hanabi-chan better? Akane asked curiously. Sure, whatever, Hanabi said distractedly. It's pretty weird, Akane said after a pause. What? Hanabi asked distractedly. You seem very strong-willed and confident, just like Hinata-sama told me, Akane said in a thoughtful fashion. Well, wait, what? You've talked to Hinata? Hanabi asked, trying to make sure she heard right. Sure, she's very friendly with everyone. She taught me a few things since she also teaches kids at our compounds, said Akane, and as soon as she turned to Hanabi she was bombarded with questions. How is she? Is she coping well? Does she talk about me often? Does she still hate me? Hanabi couldn't stop herself. The week without Hinata involved in her life really did feel like torture. She doesn't hate you, Akane said confidently, but before anything else could be said the door opened and in walked Hiyashi Hyuga. I thought you'd be done with the scheduled cleaning, Hiyashi said seriously. Yes, Hyuga-sama. I'm finished and please excuse me. Akane squawked as she rushed out of the room with her equipment. How can I help you, father? Hanabi questioned the current Hyuga head. We need to talk, was all he said, and Hanabi had a feeling that she wasn't going to like what she heard next. Hanabi stared at her father. She couldn't believe what she just heard from him. The man she absolutely idolized. The man she wanted to grow up and be like. The man she took after. She looked at Hiyashi Hyuga with hurt and anger. This had to be a nightmare somehow because she just couldn't fathom this whole situation. What? Hanabi screamed in outrage. Do not raise your voice at me, Hanabi, her father commanded dangerously. But father, I don't understand, Hanabi said more calmly, but the anger was still in her eyes. Hinata will be freed from the Hyuga clan. She will be free to pursue anything her heart desires, and she can do that outside the compound. This way she can make a life for herself outside of Konoha if that is what she wants, Hiyashi said. But you're disowning her from the Hyuga clan, Hanabi said with a look of hurt and betrayal. Yes, but at least she will no longer have to be in the service of the main family members, her father said calmly. Hanabi wasn't stupid and she saw straight through everything he said. She knew he was doing this for his own gain and he wants Hinata to be as far away as possible so she wouldn't embarrass him further with her weak attitude. He always belittled and bullied Hinata ever since Hanabi could remember, and even though he was harsh on Hanabi as well, Hinata always got worse. Now he wanted to make sure Hinata had nothing to do with the Hyuga clan after branding her with the seal and making her go through all the pain of the process. That wasn't fair. How could he be so cruel? You were no better. Her mind shot back, and for the first time in a long time Hanabi started to understand the suffering Hinata must have been experiencing, from her very own family no less. Hanabi couldn't fight the pang of guilt that shot through her heart at this. She was used to taking advantage of her sister Candice because Hinata made it easy. Besides, her father was a cold and calculating person and Hanabi always wanted to be like her father. Now, however, she was very much conflicted. I still need to discuss this matter with the elders, and in 2 days I will announce my verdict to you and Hinata, Hiyashi said. Why are you letting me know this though? Hanabi asked. It shouldn't be any of her business, besides she didn't feel like she had the right to know. I felt it fair to tell you because she is your former sister, but I will tell her as well, Hiyashi said as he stood up and left Hanabi to her thoughts. No. This couldn't be happening. If Hinata left the Hyuga clan, then Hanabi would possibly never see her sister again. She couldn't blame Hinata for leaving though. Heck, if Hanabi was in her shoes, she would curse the very existence of the main family. Hanabi was starting to get scared now and she couldn't hide it. Hinata was like a mother to her, and if she suddenly left, then Hanabi knew, she just knew that she would feel deeply hurt and betrayed. She needed to find something that could convince Hinata not to leave, but what could it be? What would make Hinata stay? If not at the Hyuga compound, then at least in Konoha. Then a thought hit her and Hanabi cringed. She didn't like this idea, but it was the only thing that seemed plausible of working. She hated to depend on people, but right now she was close to becoming desperate and she knew only one person that could help with this situation. I refuse, Hinata said, glaring at her father with anger. She reveled in watching his shocked expression. He must not have gotten the memo on her attitude change. Think about this, Hinata. You'd be starting a new life without suffering here at the Hyuga compound. You'd be free to find love and marry as you see fit without confiding to the elders as well as myself, Hiyashi said calmly. They were in a secluded area where no one would hear them. Why are you doing this to me, father? Hinata pleaded with hurt. I am not your father, not anymore, Hiyashi said irritably. I see. Well, Hiyashi-sama, I refuse your offer, Hinata said. She felt heartbroken with what her father was telling her, but she wasn't going anywhere. Why? What's so important here? You don't have a status. You're a servant. What could possibly make you stay at the Hyuga compound? You would be free to roam Konoha, so what's the problem? Hiyashi asked impatiently. He was getting tired of all this. Hinata didn't even think he deserved to know. If they wanted her out of here, then they would have to kill her. She would fight to the death if she had to, because even though she did love Naruto deeply and would be glad to be free to be with him if he would have her, the most important thing that was keeping her here, the one thing she was willing to die to protect, was her little sister. Even though they have drifted apart, Hinata would wait until Hanabi needed her. No matter what they threw at her, she absolutely refused to abandon Hanabi. I will give you time to think about this, Hinata, Hiyashi said, a bit upset as he left before Hinata could say anything. Hinata stared at his retreating form sadly. How could he do this to her? She was his daughter. Didn't he love her? Hinata pondered as she made her way to her duties. Uzumaki Naruto, one of the most prominent ninjas Konoha had in its arsenal, was in his apartment, bored as heck. Tsunade gave him the week off so he could relax since he'd been exhausting himself with non-stop missions. Ever since they beat Pain and the Akatsuki, things had been peaceful in the village hidden in the leaf. He was 16 now and acted more mature than he did when he started out in the Ninja Academy, although that didn't stop him from pulling a prank here and there just to pass the time. The villagers were slowly beginning to like him too, which was a bonus for the hyperactive ninja. He thought about his life because let's face it, there wasn't anything else he could do at the moment. Sakura started to hang out with him more ever since the event of the Akatsuki, and Naruto was happy with that. She even flirted with him on occasion, but Naruto treated that as if it was just playing around. He didn't have a crush on her anymore. He thought back to when he fought Pain and he felt like something else happened then that he should remember, but he struggled to do so. He does remember Hinata putting her body on the line to protect him, but the rest of the memory was difficult to visualize. Hinata was always a great friend and she had a place in his heart for his precious people. She was weird, yes, but she was also kind, caring, and treated people with respect and understanding. Naruto didn't even know why he was thinking about Hinata of all people, but felt somehow that this was important. He had hardly even seen her ever since they got back to the village. Come to think of it, he hadn't seen her at all in the last week, and usually he'd catch a glimpse of her, but not this week. He didn't know much about her, but he knew so much about his other friends, and that made him feel a little guilty. He didn't want to give anyone of his friends the impression that he was ignoring them. He didn't feel like visiting the Hyuga compound today though. It was full of arrogant idiots, well except for a few. He heard loud knocking from the front door and made his way there. He came out of his bedroom and went through the living room of his apartment before he opened the door to a surprising sight. Hanabi-chan? Naruto asked, surprised and amused. Hanabi never visited him, and she even told him once, when he was hanging out with Team 8 at the Hyuga compound, that she would never set 100 feet near his dirty, old and pathetic place. Hanabi had to compose herself so she didn't appear annoyed with the way he was staring at her with that stupid grin. He was the Naruto Uzumaki, savior of Konoha, and he at least deserved a little bit of grudging respect. "Hello Naruto-sama," Hanabi greeted politely. Naruto looked at surprised for a moment before a smile adorned his face. "Whatever happened to dirty blonde boy?" he questioned with an amused raised eyebrow. "I don't have time for this, you idiot. We need to talk immediately," she said seriously with a hint of desperation which Naruto didn't miss. "What's wrong, Hanabi-chan? Are you okay?" Naruto asked with a frown. She was Hinata's sister, and even though she could be arrogant at times, Naruto knew she had a heart, so he would help with whatever's troubling her, if it comes to that. "It's about Hinata," she said seriously, and saw an immediate change from Naruto. He looked worried in an instant, and Hanabi had to wonder if he knew that her big sister had a crush on him. "Is she alright?" Naruto asked near panic. He didn't know why, but the thought of anything bad happening to Hinata was making him really upset. "I'll tell you if you let me in," Hanabi said, looking around to make sure no one was listening. Naruto led her into his apartment. She took a seat on a couch and immediately went to business. "Did you know she got branded with the caged bird seal?" Hanabi asked, and wished afterward that she didn't. "What? Who did it? I'll kill them," Naruto said, overcome with rage that someone could do that to sweet Hinata. "Let me explain everything before you do something stupid, okay?" Hanabi said. Naruto calmed down a bit, but his anger was still clearly visible. "So he does like her?" Hanabi thought, amused by the revelation. "I'm listening," was Naruto's serious statement. "Those jerks were going to pay for this." Hanabi started her explanation of the situation at hand. She truly did hope that Naruto could find a solution to this. She didn't want to lose her big sister. If Naruto could make Hinata stay, then Hanabi was at least willing to participate. Hanabi was getting irritated with the Uzumaki boy right now. As soon as she finished explaining the situation, he started rambling on about killing the main family members and giving detailed descriptions on how he was going to do that. Some of the stuff he described was really disturbing. Hanabi had to wonder if Naruto was born a thick-headed idiot or if he hit his head somewhere along his life. She was really starting to have doubts on his ability to help with this situation, instead causing mass chaos. "Will you shut up already?" Hanabi said. She had enough of his antics. Naruto stopped himself and suddenly realized that he had company. He gave a sheepish grin and sat down on the couch opposite Hanabi. "Sorry, I kind of got carried away there," he said, and then laughed nervously. "Well, obviously," Hanabi said as she rolled her eyes. "How could they do that to her? She can't even hurt a fly unless it could harm the people she cared for," Naruto said sadly. "It was a real blow to hear that one of your friends was suffering so much." "I know, but what's done is done. Once you've been branded, there is no going back," Hanabi said with finality. Naruto stared at her for a moment, and that made her nervous. He had a serious look on him now. "How has she been coping?" he asked carefully. I'm not sure," Hanabi said nervously and mentally kicked herself for showing weakness. How could you not know? You've been helping her cope with it, right? He asked suspiciously. Hanabi stared at her hands on her knees, and that was all the confirmation he needed. Hanabi, Naruto said disappointedly. She was Hinata's sister and she wasn't even helping her through this. Hanabi's heart skipped a beat when she heard him say her name like that. He hadn't even used Chan in her name like he usually did. She looked at him fiercely. It's not my fault she's weak. She shouted angrily. Naruto didn't even seem fazed when he said, "It sounds like you don't love Hinata-chan." "I don't love Hinata. I only tolerate her," she shouted and got a laugh as a response. "What's so funny?" Hanabi asked, steaming. "The bull that's coming out of your mouth." He laughed and then composed himself. "Don't try to kid yourself. If you didn't really love Hinata-chan, then why are you here? The place that you told me you'd never set foot near?" Naruto questioned, and all he got as a response was stunned silence. "Look, I never had a family before, so I'm not sure how things work, but I know siblings are supposed to look out for each other, and from what I can guess you've only been the receiver and not the giver," he said seriously. "Look, the only reason I came here was to ask you to convince Hinata to stay in Konoha," Hanabi said sadly, trying to change the subject. She had already given up on the possibility of Hinata wanting to stay at the Hyuga compound after everything she has been through. "Hinata-chan's leaving Konoha?" Naruto asked, shocked. "No, but she may be disowned in 2 days from my clan, and that could give her reason to leave Konoha if she wanted to." Her eyes were starting to burn now, but she refused to cry. "Those jerks. Arg. Why do you need me to convince her though?" Naruto questioned confusedly. Hanabi had to pause at this. She thought he already knew about Hinata's crush on him. "Don't you know that my sister?" She didn't finish and waited for him to catch what she was saying. He had to know. "Your sister what?" he asked confusedly. Hanabi was shocked and had to refrain herself from slapping the living daylights out of him. He didn't know. How could that be possible? Everybody else knew about the crush but him. God, he was such a dense idiot. "Never mind," she said irritably. Hinata would have to tell him because Hanabi didn't want to mess with her sister's potential love life. "Okay, anyway, I think it would be better if it was you who convinced Hinata-chan to stay," he said. "Why me? I mean, I haven't been a really active sister in the better part of her life." She didn't want to approach Hinata and receive nothing but hatred. "Trust me, Hanabi-chan, you're what Hinata-chan needs right now, I'm sure of it," he said it with so much confidence that she wanted to believe him. "How do I do this?" she asked confusedly. She had never been the one to help somebody like this before. "Just start by being there for Hinata-chan. Do whatever it takes to show that you care for her as much as she cares for you," Naruto said and gave her a smile. Hanabi left his apartment soon enough and the smile on Naruto's face disappeared instantly. He went to his room and sat crossed-legged on his bed as he concentrated and drifted into his mindscape. He walked through a beautiful forest and made his way to a clearing. He saw somebody sleeping against a tree and he made his way there. The person he approached seemed to be really out of it, but he had to make sure. "Hey, wake up," he said softly as he nudged the figure lying on the grass against a tree. 5 more minutes," said a beautifully melodic female voice. Naruto rolled his eyes. Did he have to do this every time he came here? "Arg. You fricking lazy. Kurama." Naruto shouted, earning a loud eep for his troubles. "What the heck, Naruto-kun?" shouted an annoyed, beautiful young-looking woman. She had beautiful long red hair that went past her shoulders, blood-red eyes, nice and smooth pale skin, enticing curves, a cute face that could melt any guy's resolve, and was wearing a beautiful blue sundress with orange flowers. "Well, I wouldn't have to shout if you'd just stop being lazy. Seriously, ever since Akatsuki's demise all you've been doing is sleeping," said an irritated Naruto. "Well, I can't help it. This place you made for me is so tranquil and it's not like there's anything to do around here, Kurama pouted. That was another thing. Ever since they beat Akatsuki a few months ago, the Kyuubi began making an effort to know her vessel. Heck, Naruto didn't even know the Kyuubi was female until she told him, in which he vehemently denied her claim, resulting in another fight between them. It started out pretty rough because Naruto would not believe her, well, until she showed him her human form, which prompted a nosebleed from Naruto since Kurama was at the time. They started to interact more and Naruto found out that she wasn't as bad as everyone made her out to be. They had a great bond, like a brother and sister. He could honestly say that he cared about her very much and she cared about him as well. Is something wrong, Naruto-kun? Kurama asked upon seeing his upset face. Hinata-chan was branded with the caged bird seal, he said. Kurama was shocked. How long had she been sleeping? She knew the cute and shy Hyuga girl. She even knew about Hinata's crush on Naruto and always silently rooted for the girl. They would have both made a cute couple. Now the poor girl was branded with that awful seal. I need to know if you know of anything that could get rid of the seal on her, Naruto said. What makes you think that I would know that? Kurama asked, raising an elegant eyebrow. Well, you are really old. So maybe you've seen something that could help, he said as he shrugged his shoulders nonchalantly. A tick mark appeared on the Kyuubi's head and she promptly bonked the blonde's head. You call me old again and you'll get worse, she said dangerously. Sheesh, okay. So can you help? He asked as he rubbed the bruise in his head. I might, but I need to check the design of the caged bird seal in order to create a counter seal, Kyuubi said thoughtfully. So all I have to do is look through the seal design scrolls of those Hyuga bozos and you can make a counter seal to destroy it? Naruto asked hopefully. Pretty much, Kyuubi said and then giggled when she heard him shout, Yada, to the heavens. Great, you're the best, Kura-chan. Naruto said as he hugged her and then left the mindscape to find the Hyuga scrolls. Kurama decided to take this time and relax because she knew the next few days were going to be hectic. It was yesterday when she talked to Naruto and now it was time to act. She didn't really know how she was going to do this, but she had to make sure that it didn't result in Hinata's anger. She had always been the sister that was handed things to her, but now it was time give back and she was nervous. Would Hinata want her around? This was probably the hardest thing she could ever do, owning up to her mistakes. She fidgeted with her clothing. She wasn't wearing her usual pristine robes but that of the Hyuga branch family who served the main family, and her hair was tied into a ponytail. Akane gave the clothes to her since they were basically the same size, although the poor girl was really confused on why Hanabi wanted such clothing in the first place. Akane was another thing altogether. Whenever she came to clean her room they would always spend time together, much to Hanabi's confusion. She focused on the task at hand and made her way into the branch side of the compound. Luckily no main family member caught her wearing this. It was weird for her though because the branch people hardly paid her any mind and the people that did recognize her greeted politely like they always did. She got a really good look at their interactions and realized to her surprise that they weren't just only nice to the main family members but to each other as well. She asked a nice old lady where she could find Hinata and she was told that Hinata was outside putting clothes to dry on the clothing lines, so that's where she went. She found Hinata busy putting clothes on the lines to dry and Neji was talking to her too. She swallowed the lump in her throat and started. Hello Hinata. Neji-Nisan, she greeted with a hint of nervousness. It took Hinata a while to recognize who had greeted her, and when she saw who it was her eyes took on a cold look. Hello Hanabi-sama, Neji greeted wearily upon recognizing who Hanabi was. Hello Hyuga-sama, Hinata greeted coldly. She didn't want to do this. She didn't want make Hanabi feel uncomfortable, but she had to be on guard, Hanabi had put her through so much pain in the past, and although Hinata still loved her little sister, and would do anything to protect her, she had to make sure that Hanabi wasn't here for the sole purpose of ridiculing her. Hanabi wanted to cry. She wanted to run and hide in the deepest hole possible. Hinata was staring at her like she would an enemy. She never felt so vulnerable in her entire life, but she knew now that this is exactly what she deserved. She knew it wasn't going to be easy to get her sister back, but she couldn't back down now. Hinata needed her. IIW was wondering. Hanabi's mind went into a blank and she couldn't think of anything to say. Right now only awkward silence was present. Hinata and Neji stared at her weirdly. This was definitely something they didn't expect from the usually stoic and arrogant Hyuga heiress. Hinata didn't wait for her sister to get her wits back though and just continued working. Hanabi looked at Hinata sadly. Her sister was ignoring her and it made her hurt and remorseful. She couldn't help but hate herself for what she put Hinata through and just watched silently as Hinata continued her work. Neji was shocked to the core. Hanabi was actually looking sad, and it was because of Hinata. Usually it would be the other way around. Hinata may have seemed calm, but her body felt like lead. She could hardly hold herself together, let alone speak. She really hated doing this, but she had to be sure Hanabi was here for her and not a self-centered reason, so she kept working, hoping that Hanabi would say something else. "I will give you your privacy," Neji said as he sensed that he wasn't needed here and began to make his way to his home. So here they were, just the two of them. Hanabi mentally kicked herself. How could she act like a nervous wreck in front the supposed shy Hyuga? She composed herself as much as she could. "IW wanted to see if there was anything I could do to help around," she said as calmly as possible, but the nerves were still visible. Hinata stared at her surprised for a moment. She couldn't be asking what Hinata thought she was asking. "What do you mean?" Hinata asked to make sure. "I want to help you with the clothes," Hanabi clarified her intentions. "You not a servant Hyuga-sama, so you don't have to do this," Hinata stated with a frown. "But I want to," Hanabi whispered, and Hinata heard it loud and clear. Hinata had to think of the possibility of this being a trick. She didn't want to blindly trust people again. She would have told Hanabi that she didn't ask nor need her help, but one look at her sister made Hinata truly hate herself. Hanabi looked awful. She looked so tired that Hinata had to wonder if she was getting any sleep at all. She also looked very desperate, like she needed this, and Hinata mentally kicked herself. She hadn't taken it into account that Hanabi might be suffering from this as well. "Do you know how to put the clothes on the line?" Hinata asked. If Hanabi was trying to bond, then Hinata was all for it. Hanabi whipped her head and stared at her sister with surprise. She thought Hinata was going to brush her offer aside and just leave her. Right now all she could do was nod numbly. "There's another basket with clothes on the side. Take that one and put the clothes out to dry," Hinata said evenly as she continued with her work. Hanabi's face lit up at her sister's instructions. It wasn't much, but at least Hinata was giving this a chance. She silently thanked Naruto for his advice and set to work next to her sister. Hinata knew Hanabi ever since she was born, so she saw the happiness that radiated off her little sister. She didn't know what prompted Hanabi to do this, but she was thankful. She never wanted any animosity between them. She hoped this wasn't the last time she saw Hanabi. They needed to get through this together, and the only way that was going to happen was if they communicated and understood each other. Hinata? Hanabi asked uncertainly. Hinata replied. "Could you call me Hanabi instead of Hyuga-sama?" Hanabi asked nervously. "Okay Hanabi," Hinata said. She was actually glad for that. Calling Hanabi Hyuga-sama just put a bad taste in her mouth. "Thank you," Hanabi said, sounding relieved. She wanted to apologize for the things she did, but she wanted to wait and make sure it was the right time for that. she didn't want it to backfire in her face. On top of a building near the Hyuga compound stood a figure of unmatched brilliance and cunning, or at least that's what he'd like to think of himself. It was none other than Naruto Uzumaki. "This is a bad idea, Naruto-kun," Kurama said from inside his mindscape. "PSSHT, it's gonna work, don't you worry about that," Naruto said confidently. "It would be so much easier if you just get the information on the scrolls and then just get out of there," Kurama implored pleadingly. "You know I can't do that, Kurama-chan. Those main family fart bags need to know that nobody messes with Uzumaki, Naruto's friends," Naruto said with a mischievous grin. "You going to get caught?" she said irritably. "Yeah, right. I'm a cage-level shinobi now. Even before I was even genin, the Anbu couldn't catch me," Naruto said. "You always have to be difficult, don't you?" Kurama said, then sighed dramatically. "Sorry, Kurama-chan, but these people hurt Hinata-chan and I can't just look the other way. This prank is going to be legendary," Naruto said determinedly. Kurama sighed again. She was glad that he wasn't the type to resort to violence in this situation, but his pranks could still be a handful, especially for the receiver of the pranks. Well, at least she was going to get a good laugh out of this one way or another. Hanabi made her way to her room. It had been a long day and now it was late in the evening. Hanabi thought about today and sighed sadly. Hinata hadn't truly forgiven her and she knew it. Although considering everything that happened, she was lucky to be talking to Hinata, period. She knew it wasn't going to be easy. There was so much to make up for, so much to grovel for even if she did hate it. She had to work her way up to earn Hinata's trust and Hanabi knew it was going to get difficult soon. She needed to keep her interactions with Hinata a secret from the main family, otherwise she feared her father's wrath. It felt so weird for her. In the past she used to put Hinata through so much and she wouldn't even get a complaint from her shy sister. She wasn't born a stoic and arrogant person, but since her father was like that, she really wanted to take in his footsteps. Hurting others was his specialty, so she figured she should do the same. Look where that got her. She felt so stupid now. How could she do those things and not expect any consequences in the future? Was she really that arrogant? Well, she was a jerk and now she was paying for it. Hanabi went to her room to prepare for tomorrow. She was going to help Hinata with whatever she had to, no matter what. She closed the door to her room, never noticing the figure that whooshed past it. He was in. It wasn't easy though, since he had to dodge all the guards. They also had that Byakugan, so he had to be extra careful. Naruto made his way through the corridors of the main family building carefully. He hadn't gotten caught yet. In fact, it wasn't even that difficult infiltrating this place. Those Hyuga idiots were probably too arrogant to take their security seriously. They most probably thought that no one would dare enter their home uninvited. Guess they didn't count on him coming in. He knew very little of where he was going, but he needed to find the place they kept their scrolls in order for Kurama to make the counter seal. Only then could he initiate his ultimate plan. He made his way through the Hyuga main family home, ducking and hiding when necessary. He suddenly remembered, from what Nei told him, that the scrolls were kept in the head Hyuga's office. He got to the office and saw none other than Neji himself guarding it. Crap. Now how am I gonna get in? He thought worriedly. There was no possible way he could sneak past, over, behind, or even through Neji, especially considering that the Byakugan was referred to as the all-seeing eye. Then an idea struck him and he couldn't help but chuckle quietly. Neji wasn't enjoying his day. It was bad enough that he was doing guard duty as a favor to a fellow branch member, but this was absolutely boring. He really wished Tsunade would give him a mission so he could get out of this place for a while, but he already knew that wasn't happening anytime soon. He prayed for something, anything to happen. Boy, was he going to regret that. "Hello, Neji-kun," said a sultry feminine voice. Neji did a double take. For a moment he thought he was dreaming this up until reality struck him. Naruto. What are doing here? And in that stupid perverted just you no less. Neji whispered fiercely. What the heck was Naruto doing here at this time? Why was he in his female form? What the heck was that idiot up to? I decided to pay you a visit, hot stuff. Truth be told, this wasn't Naruto but his female shadow clone. He didn't use this technique as much as he did as a kid, but that didn't mean he stopped using it altogether. He liked to call her Naruko nowadays because let's face it, he wasn't really good at coming up with original names. It was also pretty weird how Naruko took upon her own persona and actually acted like a girl. Naruto couldn't explain it, but the more he summoned Naruko, the longer she would last before popping and the more resistant she would become to touch. He shrugged his shoulder from his hiding place and decided to watch the show. You shouldn't be here at this time, Neji said angrily. The fool. He was going to get himself into big trouble, especially if the female portion of the Hyuga clan caught him using his stupid Warok no Jutsu. Then you have to catch me first, sweetie, Naruko said as she dashed off in a random direction. Naruto. Neji said as he chased after the person he thought was his idiotic friend. He didn't even bother activating his Byakugan to make sure that it was the real Naruto he was chasing. He was going to kill him. Neji was going to kill the moron. Naruto came out of his hiding place and made his way into the office and began searching for the right scrolls. He found them and allowed Kurama to see through his eyes so she could analyze the scrolls. Interesting. They really did their homework when they made this seal, Kurama said in the mindscape. So can you make a counter seal? Naruto asked worriedly. Already working on it. It should be done in few hours, 7 tops, Kurama said. Really? You could do it that quickly? Naruto asked. Yep. I am pretty skilled when it comes to seals, Kurama stated. Geez. You really are old, Naruto said. Naruto, Kurama warned. Yeah, I get it. Anyway, can I do what want to do now? Naruto asked hopefully. Sure, but don't kill anybody, the Kyuubi said half-heartedly and then cut off their connection. An evil grin appeared on Naruto's face. He took out a scroll and unsealed what was inside. There was a lot of stuff which was understandable, he never did anything without effort. The sun rose slowly in Konoha. It looked to be a beautiful day in the Hidden Leaf Village. Workers made their ways to their destinations, eager to sell their product or service. The tranquility of the village wasn't going to last long though. Hiashi Hyuga woke up the same way he always did, with a serious expression on his face. He was Hyuga head and it was his duty to make sure that he was respected among every Hyuga and everyone else, they were all beneath him for all he cared. He talked to the elders and they all agreed that it was best to cut his losses and disown Hinata, whether she liked it or not. If she made it difficult then they would just use the seal on her. Today was the day and he felt relieved, things were finally going to be back in order. He scratched himself and got out of his bed. He was about to make his way to his bathroom when something stopped him cold in his tracks. He looked at his bedroom wall in horror. Painted on the walls in red were the words, "Main family sucks balls." And Hiashi couldn't hide his shock on the fact that somebody would dare write such a thing, in his private quarters no less. Before he could ponder possible suspects, he heard a loud explosion come from outside and ran to investigate. He made his way to the main family garden, which is where the commotion was. When he arrived at the scene, he saw what the problem was. The people around and in the garden were covered with orange and purple paint, it looked like a bloodbath of color. He scratched himself again and decided to find out what happened. What is the meaning of this? He bellowed. Main family members stared at him weirdly but gave him no answer. Well, Hiashi yelled, trying to instill fear but only got weirder looks. A group of branch females approached him, some looking upset and others with blushes on their faces. We didn't know you felt so strongly about us, Hiyashi-sama, said one of the women with a blush on her face. What are you talking about? Heishi asked, truly confused. The women looked at each other nervously as if silently debating before they all nodded and promptly pulled their pants down to show their underwear. Hiyashi wanted to scream at them for such an act, but when he saw the reason for it he was shocked. On all of their underwear were the words, "Property of Hiyashi. Hands off," written clearly, and it was on their rears as well, adding to the horror Hiyashi was experiencing. What the heck was going on here? Hiyashi, what is going on here? The main family elders approached the garden looking angry, and Hiyashi knew why. On their foreheads were the words, "Fart bag," written in black. I am as confused as you are, Heishi said irritably. I tried everything and I can't get this off my head, a female elder said angrily. Father, I heard an explosion. Hanabi shouted as she approached the scene and had a good look at it too. Whoever did this shall pay. Hiyashi said furiously. To think he actually thought this was going to be a good day. Hanabi looked at her father and had to stifle a laugh, but Hiyashi caught it. What is it? Hiyashi asked. He suddenly realized that he'd been scratching himself a lot but couldn't stop. He was very itchy. Did you always have mustache and beard? Hanabi asked, struggling to compose herself. So that's what the weird looks were for. Hiyashi didn't even want to know what he looked like right now. If it was anything compared to the others, then he just knew he looked ridiculous. Whoever did this was going to pay dearly. The main family members were arguing with each other now. They were pointing fingers, trying to weasel out the culprit. Through all the chaos, Naruto was on the same building that he used to view the Hyuga compound. His vision wasn't as good as the Byakugan, but he could still see how everything was being played out. So now here he was, laughing his butt off. It went better than he expected. That would teach those uptight, arrogant losers. You could have eased up a little bit, Kurama said, having watched the whole thing by accessing his eyes. Yeah, right. It was just perfect. Naruto shouted with a grin. The counter seal is ready, Kurama said suddenly. All right. Time to go find Hinata-chan. Naruto said happily. Things were looking up. He hadn't forgotten that today was the day Hinata could be potentially disowned from her clan, so he needed to act quickly before things escalated too much. On the plus side, those elders were probably more worried about the prank than Hinata herself, so at least he bought himself more time. Today Naruto was going to make sure that he set Hinata free from the caged bird seal. Today was the day. That was the only thing going through Hinata's mind. It was either she would be disowned and leave, or they could possibly use harsher methods to get her to cooperate. She hadn't ruled out the possibility of them using the seal on her and killing her in the process, but it didn't matter because she wasn't leaving Hanabi here alone. What if she died? If she was killed, then Hanabi wouldn't have a sister anymore and she would play right into the fingers of the elders. She hated them for forcing this upon her, making her suffer just because she showed kindness and caring to people. If she was Hyuga head, she would ban the caged bird seal and make sure that the main and branch families had equal rights, but that couldn't happen anymore because she was branded and therefore couldn't retain her heiress status in order for her to have the opportunity become Hyuga head. She woke up a bit later than she normally would. She made her way through the branch family dorm rooms and noticed that there wasn't a soul in sight, making her worry. Was this their plan? To get her alone to make sure she couldn't resist them when they strike? She heard voices in the cafeteria, in the distance, and sighed in relief. She must have slept longer than she thought to be missing out on her cafeteria duties. Before she could walk over, a voice stopped her cold. Hey Hinata-chan, shouted the hyperactive ninja who was standing on the roof of the dorms. Hinata looked like a deer caught in headlights. Never in a million years did she expect anything like this to happen. Naruto was here. How did he get in? Maybe Neji let him in. She couldn't move her body. She just looked as frozen as a popsicle. Hinata-chan. Naruto tried again when he saw the faraway look on her face. That snapped her out of her thoughts and she came back to reality. Hin Naruto K-kun, Hinata stuttered with a huge blush on her face. Curses, her shyness was back. She was trying to look anywhere but her crush because she knew if she stared into those beautiful cerulean irises she would faint. Why did her confidence leave her now of all time? She was already starting to feel lightheaded and had to concentrate to make sure she didn't fall. Naruto looked at Hinata carefully. She was acting weird again. Seriously, did he have bad breath or something? He also noticed the seal on her forehead and couldn't help the anger that bubbled within him, but that anger quickly turned into his famous foxy grin. He looked around to make sure they were the only people around before he jumped from the roof and landed right next to her. Look, Hinata-chan, I'm not really supposed to be here, but I need to talk to you in private, he said seriously, looking around to make sure that it was still clear. Hinata's heart skipped a beat. He wanted to talk to her in private. He came here for her. He must have heard about the bird seal already. He was probably here more out of pity than anything. Hinata's head dropped a bit. Sure, she said nervously, but Naruto also caught a hint of disappointment. Great. Follow me, Naruto said as he started to jump from roof to roof, making his way outside the Hyuga compound with Hinata following shortly after him. They made their way through a forest until they found themselves at a clearing with a huge pond in the middle. Hinata never came around here, but it looked so beautiful and romantic that for a fleeting moment she thought Naruto brought her here because he wanted to confess his undying love for her, then promptly squashed the idea as soon as it came to mind. She was scared. She didn't want his pity if that's what they came here for. She was strong enough to endure the suffering until the end. She looked at Naruto and saw that he wasn't even focused on anything. He seemed pretty out of it, but she was too scared of stuttering something stupid to call out to him. Naruto, however, was having a conversation with his tenant at the moment. We here now. So what's next? Naruto thought to Kurama. It was her idea to bring Hinata to this place, but he didn't think too much on it. He came here dozens of times. Now first make your fingers into the ram seal. Then expel a little amount of chakra from your body. Your chakra needs to be mixed with my chakra in order for this to work, and keep in mind that both chakra signatures need to be distributed equally. Make sure Hinata closes her eyes too, Kurama stated seriously. There wouldn't be any damage if he got it wrong, but it would be annoying to do it over and over again until they got it right. Naruto took a few steps away from Hinata and then faced her again. He could tell she was confused and worried. She didn't know why she was here after all. Please trust me, Hinata-chan, and close your eyes, Naruto said as started the process and made his hands into the ram seal. He kept his eyes on her and used her image to focus. Strips of blue chakra emitted from his body, then the chakra color turned into a light lavender. Hinata was pretty scared right now. What was he doing? Was he going to hurt her? Hinata mentally kicked herself for the second thought. Her Naruto-kun would never hurt her. She stood there and closed her eyes, waiting for whatever was going to happen. Well done, Naruto-kun. The process is complete. You can get rid of the seal now. Kurama said happily. How do I do that? Naruto asked, confused. You have to kiss her, Kurama said, and waited until she heard him scream, what? Before she giggled. Hinata was startled when she heard Naruto scream. What's wrong, Naruto-kun? She asked with her eyes still closed. It seemed that it was easier to speak to him without becoming a nervous wreck when she couldn't see him. Nothing. Everything's fine, Naruto said nervously, but Hinata didn't catch it and relaxed again. Ha 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 ha, relax, Naruto-kun. You only have to kiss her on the forehead where the seal is so the counter seal can do its work, and before you ask, there isn't any other way to do this. The last part was a lie though. He could use his fingers too, but Kurama was getting tired of Naruto's obliviousness to Hinata's feelings. Okay then. If this is what needs to be done, then I gotta do it, Naruto said determinedly. Do what? Hinata asked when she heard him. Hinata could hear footsteps coming to her, and since she and Naruto were the only people in this area, then she knew it had to be him. What was he up to? Before she could ponder anything, she felt something wet and soft pressed to her forehead. She opened her eyes a bit and found herself staring at Naruto's close chest, then she quickly shut her eyes again as she gasped. Oh my god. He was kissing her forehead. Hinata's legs were like jelly and her face was burning up a storm. This couldn't be real. It had to be a genjutsu or a really vivid dream somehow. The love of her life was actually kissing her. He never expressed any interest in her before. God, it felt so good. Her forehead was giving off a lovely sensation and she moaned quietly. Hinata didn't move. She was too afraid that if she did, then this would all end. Any coherent thought she may have had was shattered as she enjoyed this moment. Naruto for this moment felt really embarrassed. He felt he should have asked her if she wanted him to kiss her forehead, but his sense of duty overruled everything and he just rushed in. He couldn't see her face clearly, so he didn't know what she thought about this, but he hoped she would forgive him. His face was as red as a tomato, but he couldn't stop until the seal was destroyed. He glanced down and saw the caged bird seal glowing faintly, then it started to disappear altogether. He watched as it vanished from Hinata's forehead as if it never existed before. He pulled away from the kiss. Hinata opened her eyes slowly when she felt him pull away. The kiss was incredible. She felt so lightheaded that she couldn't focus, but she did look into his cerulean eyes, those hypnotic cerulean eyes, and knew she was going to faint. Before darkness could claim her, she heard her crush say, "Hinata Hyuga. You are free." And then everything went blank. She didn't know how long she was out when she finally came to. She sat up and realized that she was close to the pond. She looked to her right and saw Naruto looking at her happily. Welcome back, Hinata-chan, Naruto said happily. What's going on, Naruto-kun? Hinata questioned and then cursed her shyness. Look inside the pond, was all he said. Hinata looked at him confusedly before she made her way to the pond. She looked inside and only saw fish swimming around. She also heard something that suspiciously sounded like Naruto chuckling quietly. She focused her eyes but still couldn't see anything in the lake. She was about to ask what she was looking for when she saw her mirror image and gasped. Her forehead was clear. The seal wasn't there and Hinata was shocked to the core. She slowly looked at Naruto. The seal? She whispered, shocked. Yep. It's gone, Naruto said with a foxy grin. How? Was all she could ask. When I heard that you got branded with that thing, I couldn't just sit back and let you suffer, he said. How did you do it? Hinata asked, stupefied. There wasn't supposed to be anything that could destroy the cage bird seal, it was permanent. Friends in high places, he said, and you got that right, from Kurama. Hinata stared at him. He did this for her. He found a way to break the seal to save her. The man she loved. She couldn't take her eyes off him. She wasn't even afraid of fainting right now. He was everything to her. Her love for him only deepened and she couldn't picture him with any other woman but herself. She didn't know what it was, whether it was all the pain she'd been through or what he did for her, but she couldn't stop herself as she flung herself at him and cried on his chest, letting all her emotions out. Naruto stiffened when Hinata's arms encircled on his neck and she cried her heart out. He looked around nervously, not really knowing how to deal with this. Just relax and hold her, Kurama chimed in as she watched and ate some ice cream. If she was going to stay in the mindscape forever, then at least she would indulge herself. Naruto held Hinata and let her cry for as long as needed. When Hinata finished, she looked up at him with adoration and love. She wanted him. She wanted him so badly. Naruto, she breathed as she closed her eyes and leaned in for a kiss. Naruto looked up into the sky and realized that it was getting a bit late into the day. Come on, Hinata-chan. We better get you back home before people start getting worried, Naruto said as he disengaged from the hug and made his way in the direction of the Hyuga compound. Hinata pouted. She was so close. Oh well, it would have to happen at another time. She quickly tore a part of her clothing and made a makeshift headband to cover up her forehead. She didn't need any chaos right now because she lost the seal. If Naruto could destroy the bird seal, then Hinata knew that somehow the Hyuga branch family could be saved from this burden, but for now she had to get back or people might start getting suspicious. She made her way home with Naruto, so happy that the Hyuga compound could possibly have a peaceful future. Hinata was walking with Naruto, side to side. They were walking through the streets of Konoha, making their way to the Hyuga compound. She adjusted her makeshift headband to make sure it covered her entire forehead. It was these times when she wished she hadn't left her Konoha headband in her old room, but with the lack of missions and the branding she forget all about it. Even if she was a servant, she was still a ninja. She glanced nervously at Naruto's hand and then her own. She really wanted to touch him, to hold his hand in her own, to convey her feelings to him, to truly love him, but she was scared. What if he didn't feel the same way? What if she ended up chasing him away with being too forward? She knew he could be dense, but that was who he was and she still loved him. Then another thought came. The elders and even her father would not be happy with her being actually free from the clutches of that cursed seal, especially considering the matter of her banishment today. That also brought another thought. Naruto-kun? Hinata asked nervously. Yeah, Hinata-chan. Naruto replied as he looked down at her. How did you know? Hinata asked, hoping she didn't have to explain what she meant. Someone who really cares about you told me, he smiled softly at her. She wasn't going to ask who it was because she doubted he would tell her. So you also know about my banishment? She asked uncertainly. Quote, Naruto-kun? Hinata asked after not getting a response. Quote, oh crap, I totally forgot, Naruto exclaimed as he stopped walking. He mentally kicked himself. He was such an idiot. He was bringing Hinata to their hands without even coming up with a plan to stop her from being disowned. He didn't know how he was going to do it though, since he couldn't exactly interfere in other clan matters, even if he was technically the head of 2 clans. He needed help on this one, but who could it be? He got the idea and grinned. Hey Hinata-chan, let's take a quick detour before we get to the compound, Naruto said as he held her hand and led her to his destination. Hinata could have protested on the possibilities of someone looking for her by now, but she was too occupied with the feeling of Naruto actually holding her hand as he led her to who knows where. Tsunade was in her office trying to finish her paperwork with the assistance of Sakura, trying being the main word since she kept getting distracted with the temptation of drinking the sake in her secret compartment under her desk. She was getting there though, and she would probably be halfway done by midday. Sakura was a big help to her, but sometimes Tsunade wondered when Sakura would start looking for a love interest. She couldn't spend the rest of her days working even if she was only 15. She knew Sakura was over the Uchiha, but what if he came back? He was still out there after all, plotting his revenge on Konoha for what they did to his clan. She sighed and continued working. Almost there, Hokage-sama. Only then can you enjoy your secret's sake, Sakura said knowingly as she carried finished paperwork to the filing cabinet. Tsunade didn't even bother asking how she knew about her sake. It seemed Shizune rubbed off on Sakura more than Tsunade knew. She was startled when the door to her office suddenly burst open. Hey Ba-chan, I need your help. Naruto voice echoed in the office, and the poor blonde was met with a super punch to the face, sending him flying into the nearest wall. Tsunade punched him for two reasons. The first being him not knocking before he came into her office, and the second being his use of that stupid name. Some woman didn't like to be referred to as old, and she was one of them. What the heck, you old hag? Naruto shouted as he came out of the hole on the wall. He shrunk when he saw the dark aura radiating off the Hokage. How many times must I tell you to stop calling me that, you brat? Tsunade shouted. She couldn't understand what was wrong with Naruto. He should have gotten the message to stop that name from the hundreds of punches she'd given him prior to today. Whatever. I need your help, he said seriously. Tsunade snapped out of her anger, and that's when she noticed the other visitor in the room. Fine. Take a seat, she grumbled. Hey Sakura-chan, Naruto said as he noticed his former teammate. Naruto. Sakura shook her head, amused by his antics. She truly hoped he wouldn't lose his humor in the future, but that didn't mean he couldn't grow up when it called for it. So what can I help you two with today? Tsunade started. So Naruto started explaining all the events that Hinata had to endure. Throughout the explanation you could clearly see Tsunade's rage rising to the surface. Are you okay, Hinata? Does the seal hurt? Tsunade asked, concerned while looking directly at Hinata's headband. I'm fine, Hokage-sama, thanks to Naruto-kun's help, Hinata said, blushing. Wait, Naruto. How did you help Hinata? Sakura asked. By getting rid of the bird seal, he said simply. Tsunade and Sakura looked at him as if he grew a second head. Naruto. Naruto got rid of the caged bird seal. Impossible. The seal is unbreakable and he isn't a seal master. It's all true, Hinata said, smiling shyly and lovingly in Naruto's direction, which didn't go unnoticed by Sakura or Tsunade, the former frowning slightly. Judging by the covering of your forehead, I'd guess nobody else knows about this. Tsunade asked, receiving a nod from Hinata. Your banishment is today as well. Tsunade continued and got another nod. You can't let that happen, I mean Tsunade-sama, Naruto quickly corrected as he saw Tsunade ready to punch him again. This is very important, Naruto, because if you could really break the seal, then you must see me later today. With that being said, shinobi and other clans cannot interfere in this matter, Tsunade said seriously, and both Naruto and Hinata's heads dropped in despair. Tsunade suddenly stood up and gave them a smile. But since I'm the leader of this village and I have the right to look after every individual here, then that means this matter concerns me as well, she said. Wait, does that mean you can do something about this? Naruto asked, confused. Tsunade rolled her eyes, but the smile was still on her face. Yes, Naruto, that's exactly what it means, Tsunade said in mock exasperation. Alright. Naruto pumped his fist into the air. Come on then, let's get this stupid thing over with, Tsunade said as she started to make her way to the door. Hinata followed, but before Naruto could do the same, Sakura tugged his arm. Hey Naruto, after all this is done, do you think we could get something to eat? Sakura asked, looking at him seriously. Huh, oh sure thing, Sakura-chan, Naruto said almost distractedly, and for a moment he thought he saw Sakura's eye flash with an emotion he couldn't get. Great, she said happily as she made her way to her mentor. Hiyashi was not a happy man at the moment. Thanks to that commotion this morning, which resulted in a lot of cleaning up and marriage requests from the females he supposedly owned as property, he momentarily forgot all about Hinata's disownment, and when he sent people to fetch her, they told him she couldn't be found. So now here he was, with the elders, in their meeting room, waiting for news on that pathetic girl's whereabouts. Damn her. Why can't she just leave already? Why must she always give him trouble? He would make sure to activate the seal on her as soon as she came back, that will teach her of her place. Hello Hiyashi. Hiyashi looked for who the person that greeted him so informally was and saw the Hokage herself standing with 3 more people and one of them being the subject of all this. Tsunade-sama, Haruno-san, Uzumaki Namikaze-sama, Hinata, he addressed them all with practiced politeness. Wow, you actually the first person to call me that in a while, Naruto laughed. It wasn't the fact that he hated the name Namikaze, in fact he cherished it, it was his father's last name after all. Ever since he found out the Yondaime Hokage was his father, he didn't let it get to his head, he used that as motivation to get even stronger. He also knew where he got his Uzumaki last name too, his mother Kushina. He didn't know much about his mother, but he knew she was a strong and loving woman who sacrificed herself for him in this village, and by God he would make sure her memory lived through him. Thank you for bringing Hinata home. Hiyashi kept up the act, but he had a bad feeling that something didn't seem right. Let's cut the chit-chat, shall we? You know exactly why I'm here, Tsunade said, staring unflinchingly into Hiyashi's eyes. I see, Hiyashi said irritably, glancing at Hinata. He knew he couldn't turn Tsunade away now, she was the Hokage and an act like that would be considered disrespectful. He could tell the elders were not liking where this was going, and neither was he. Naruto took a glance at Hinata to see how she was coping and was surprised. She wasn't being weird right at this moment, she looked confident and fearless as she stared straight at her father. He felt a slight tug in his heart and had to wonder what that was about. He looked carefully at Hinata and couldn't help but stare. When she was quiet and weird he thought she looked pretty cute, but right now she looked like a woman you wouldn't mess with. She took a glance at him and then quickly stared back at her father, but now she was sporting a blush and that snapped him out of his staring. Why the heck was he staring that long? He was pretty confused but decided to drop the thought for now. Hinata was struggling to keep her cool. It wasn't the fierce gaze of her father that had her weak in the knees, but the way Naruto looked at her. Why couldn't she just tell him how she felt already? She knew if she took too long to confess her love for him, then another girl would just come up and take him, especially since a lot of the female population have taken a liking to him ever since he saved everyone from Akatsuki. If he ended up with another woman, then she would lose the will to live. No one could ever compete with Naruto's kindness, and she desperately wanted to spend the rest of her life with him, bearing his children and growing old together. She pushed the thought aside and decided to focus on the matter at hand before she fainted. Sakura, for her part, was a little annoyed at Naruto. When they were kids, he would pledge his underlying love for her and always tried his best to win her affection, even when she told him that she only loved Sasuke. She did love the Uchiha deeply then, but now everything had changed. It took a long time, but after Akatsuki she finally noticed what a great person Naruto was. She started to hang out with him more to see if his past affections for her were still existent. She even flirted with him here and there to give him little bits of hints to tell him that she was at least interested in a date, but he never took them seriously, he was as oblivious as ever. She saw how he looked at Hinata and how Hinata looked at him earlier and couldn't help but become suspicious. What was going on between them? Naruto was never the type of person to acknowledge a female's interest in him before. Did he realize Hinata's crush on him, and more importantly, does he like her back? She couldn't help then twinge of jealousy she felt at the thought. She liked Hinata, she really did, but if she thinks it was going to be that easy to win Naruto over, then she had another thing coming. Sakura was not going to sit back and just watch things unfold. It wasn't anything personal to Hinata, but Sakura would make sure that she and Naruto would start a relationship that didn't convey friendship. Sorry Hinata, but you're not the only one interested, Sakura thought with a hint of remorse, but she wasn't losing Naruto to Hinata. Very well Hokage-sama. Please take seat at my side, Hiyashi said. He had given up on the possibility of Tsunade leaving. She had a huge influence in clan matters as the Hokage, but she couldn't stop clan tradition. Hopefully this would end in his favor. You are free to take seat amongst us, Haruno-san and Uzumaki Namikaze-sama, Hiashi said, trying to at least be polite to these intruders. Sakura made her way and sat next to her mentor, but the only thing Naruto did was stand right next to Hinata. You can just call me Naruto, you know, and I'm fine standing here, thanks. He said the last part seriously, and Hiashi knew he wasn't going to get the boy to step aside. So now here they were, Hinata standing side by side with Naruto staring at the seated elders. Naruto took hold of Hinata's hand for moral support, although he did hear something that suspiciously sounded like Kurama squealing, so romantic. But maybe his mind was just playing tricks on him. As you wish, Naruto-sama, let us begin. Hinata Hyuga, your reasoning for your summons here is due to me and the elders' agreement that it would be more beneficial for you to part with the Hyuga compound in order for you to not be subjugated to the life of a servant and the potential pain emitted from the caged bird seal, Hiashi said, diplomatic. That's another thing, Hiashi. Why was Hinata branded with the seal? Tsunade asked. She already knew the real reason, but she didn't want to appear too suspicious. Hinata was unfit to be heiress and potential clan head, and so I had no choice but to brand her, Hiashi said. He already knew she didn't believe him from the way she raised an eyebrow in his direction. Really? What made her so unfit that she was branded instead, just being put with the other main family members? From what I can understand, there are hundreds of main family members who don't even hold any rank but are still not branded with the cage bird seal, Tsunade asked with fake confusion. In the Hyuga compound we need a head to compose and complete order among our people, and for this to happen the head needs to develop and utilize certain aspects for complete composure and control. Hinata has displayed none of this characteristics, so she was unfit to be head since the position would overwhelm her. Adding to the fact that she was heiress and eligible for the role of head, I had little choice but to expel her from the main family, Hiashi said evenly. So what you trying to tell me is that you did this for Hinata? Tsunade asked in disbelief. This man had the gall to try and cover up his atrocious act. I'm saying I did this for the betterment of my clan, Hiashi spoke. So why is Hinata here exactly, Hiashi? Tsunade asked. She is here because we are freeing her from the suffering she has endured in the Hyuga clan, Hiashi said. You mean banishment? Naruto said, looking pissed, but he soon calmed down when he felt Hinata squeeze his hand gently. In technical terms, yes, Hiashi said. These people were already becoming problematic. I see. Does she have a choice in this matter? Tsunade asked, masking her disgust. We cannot risk her suffering any further, so no, it is not optional, Hiashi said. This time Tsunade did frown, but she had to keep her composure. What's your say, Hinata? Tsunade asked after a pause. Hinata knew her father wanted nothing to do with her, and although she was saddened by it, she had no choice but to take it as it was. She needed to be around though, she needed to see Hanabi after all. Then an idea came to her. I will do as you wish, father, but only on two conditions, Hinata said, and saw Hiashi's anger rising. And what are these two conditions? Hiashi asked irritably. That I would be allowed at regular intervals, every day, to come inside the compound without trouble and see whoever I wish here, inside and outside the compound, Hinata said seriously. How dare she suggest that? That would defeat the purpose of the banishment altogether. He was about to deny her request, but someone cut him off. That's an excellent idea, Hinata. You wouldn't have to suffer if you don't live here, but visiting the compound as well would not be an unwelcome prospect, Tsunade said. I do not think that is wise, Hokage-sama, Hiashi said, trying his best to dull his anger. Nonsense. This way she would technically not be a part of the Hyuga compound at all. All in favor. she asked as she stared challengingly at the elders. They all looked pissed, but she didn't give a damn because she knew they had no other choice. If they didn't agree, then they would have to explain themselves further, possibly exposing their true intentions. She felt proud of her efforts when most raised their hands at her. We should agree on visiting times then, Hiashi gritted out. If she was going to come here, then she should at least stay as little as possible. Is 5 hours fine? Tsunade asked with a smile. That is acceptable, Hogake-sama, another elder said, seeing as Hiashi struggled to speak. Then it's settled, Tsunade said. This meeting is adjourned. Please excuse me, Hiashi said as he made his way out of the meeting room with a dark aura. Tsunade stood and made her way to Naruto and Hinata, taking note of their intertwined fingers. I'm sorry, Hinata, but if I asked for more time, then they would have been problems, Tsunade said, looking guilty. It's all right. Thank you so much, Hokage-sama, Hinata said, truly grateful. So when were you going to tell me you two were together? Tsunade asked, raising an eyebrow. They looked at her weirdly, then noticed their intertwined hands and released each other as if they've been burned, and Tsunade couldn't help but chuckled as they both blushed. Sakura saw this interaction too and frowned. I don't know what you talking about, Naruto stammered. It's okay, you don't have to tell me. We need to arrange a place for you to stay for now, Hinata, Tsunade said. She can stay with me, Naruto said, surprising everyone. Heck, he even surprised himself with how quickly he suggested it. Hinata blushed up a storm. Tsunade had a glint in her eye that Naruto didn't like, and Sakura was unreadable. Are you okay with that, Hinata? Tsunade asked. Hinata didn't trust her voice, so she just nodded her head like a bobblehead. No funny business, you hear me? Tsunade teased, making them both blush again. Good. Well, let's pack your stuff and leave already. This place just reeks of arrogance and it's getting pretty late, Tsunade said as she started walking away. Hey Naruto, are we still on for that bite to eat? Sakura asked Naruto. Hinata was leading Tsunade to her room. Don't worry, Sakura-chan. Once we get everything sorted for Hinata-chan, then me and Hinata-chan can all get something to eat, Naruto said as he flashed her a grin and walked a little faster so as not to lose Hinata and Tsunade in this big place, never noticing a fuming Sakura. Sakura wanted to punch him. How could he be so oblivious? What was wrong with him? When she asked if they could get food together, she didn't mean Hinata included. She wanted to be alone and possibly experience something romantic with him. How on earth can he not take a hint? He had been really close to Hinata today. She didn't miss his little show of holding Hinata's hand, and her suspicions were yet again piqued. What was going on? Now Naruto and Hinata were living together too. This wasn't going good and in her favor. Looks like she had to up her game. It was late now. Hanabi wasn't sleeping comfortably. She was used to Hinata taking care of her, making sure she slept tight, but Hinata hadn't been in her room in over a week, and after today she might never be again. She couldn't sleep soundly. It was too difficult with the constant nightmares of her past misgivings. She felt something caressing her head and opened her eyes groggily from her bed. She looked up and saw a silhouette. Her mind was still clouded and her eyes were still blurry, that she didn't know exactly who the person was, but the silhouette looked eerily similar to her mother. Mom? Hanabi asked in her groggy state. She rubbed her eyes and focused on the figure. It wasn't her mother but a surprised Hinata, and Hanabi stared at her wide-eyed. Hinata was in her room. Did she really call Hinata mom? She felt really embarrassed, and in the past she would have berated Hinata for waking her up, but right now she was exactly the person Hanabi was desperately waiting to see. Hey! Hinata whispered softly, still caressing Hanabi's head gently. Hinata. What happened? What did the elders say? Hanabi asked groggily. She had long given up on masking her emotion around Hinata, but it would only be Hinata that would see her this way. I've been banished, Hinata stated as she stared carefully at Hanabi's reaction. Hanabi was shocked. She knew it was leading up to this, but only now did reality strike. She was losing Hinata and she won't ever see her again. All the pain, the hurt, the suffering in her trying to make up for it was worth nothing. She felt like she was dying. She wanted to just lie in a hole for the rest of her days. Her body was numb, she couldn't think of anything coherent. She didn't know what to do. Cry, scream. She just sat on her bed. Hinata made sure she looked carefully at Hanabi's reaction. She saw the hurt, betrayal, and most importantly the heartbreak that played off of her little sister's face. She had to know if Hanabi really wanted to make amends, and this was proof of her sister's regret. When Hanabi's breathing started to quicken, Hinata had enough. But I made sure that I could come and see you, Hinata finished and reveled in seeing her sister's relieved face. Are you going now? Hanabi asked, sounding much better. Yes, but I'll come see you every day. Don't forget to brush your teeth, condition your hair, wash every part of your body, Hinata said motherly and received a half-hearted glare from Hanabi. I'm not a baby, Hinata. Hanabi pouted cutely. Hinata stared at Hanabi with something in her eye that Hanabi couldn't understand. Then out of nowhere Hinata hugged Hanabi and put her chin on her little sister's head. Hanabi stiffened, but Hinata didn't care. I love you, Hanabi, Hinata whispered lovingly, and it took a while, but she finally noticed Hanabi's body shaking. She looked down and found Hanabi staring at her with tears in her eyes. I'm so sorry, Hinata. I'm sorry for everything. I understand if you'll never forgive me, but please give me a chance. Please, La. Hanabi was cut off in a tighter embrace as she sobbed on her sister's chest. A part of her hated this weakness, but the rest of her couldn't care less. She missed Hinata so much. Shish, we'll get through this. We'll start slow first, okay? Hinata said soothingly. She didn't know Hanabi felt so strongly about this. They had unresolved issues, but if they were strong enough, then they could get through it. Hinata hoped Hanabi wouldn't go back to her arrogant and cruel self, because she doubted she would openly trust Hanabi again. Okay, I got to go now, but I'll see you tomorrow, okay? Hinata said and got a tired nod in response. Hinata left the room and made her way to the entrance where she could see the people that were waiting for her. So did you see Hanabi-chan? Naruto asked when he noticed her coming. He was also holding all her bags since he insisted on taking them for her. Yes, she was sleeping, Hinata smiled. Ah, how cute. So are we gonna stay here until tomorrow or something? Tsunade said sarcastically. It wasn't that late into the night, but Tsunade was always an impatient woman. Oh yeah, we should go, Naruto said as he started walking. Tsunade-sama, what about your meeting with Naruto? Sakura asked. Oh yes, Naruto, don't forget our meeting. Come to my office at midday tomorrow, Tsunade said. No prob, Naruto said, then felt a tug on his sleeve and then looked down to notice Hinata was holding it. Naruto-kun. Thank you for everything. It means a lot to me, Hinata said shyly, holding on to his wrist and not looking him in the eye as she had a blush. It's okay, Hinata. I'll always be there when you need me, he said. Hinata tripped on her footing and quickly composed herself. Did he know how much he affected her? How much his words and his kindness made her want to jump him and kiss him senseless? She decided not to focus too much on it. Oh, by the way, I meant what I said. No funny business. We don't want little Naruto's and Hinata's running down the street, Tsunade teased and didn't take notice of Sakura's displeasured face. Ba-chan. Naruto stammered and received a punch for his troubles. Hinata had to control herself before she fainted in the middle of the streets. She was living with Naruto now. Oh god, if she wasn't careful then she would surely faint more times than she could count in his presence. She just hoped that things would end well for her, especially now since she was living with her crush. I'm coming, sweetie, said a womanly voice, and that made Hinata wake up with a start. She looked around the visible vicinity and realized that she was in Naruto's bedroom. She quickly looked to her side and sighed in relief. Leaving in Naruto's apartment was in no means easy. They were always around each other, and on so many occasions she had fainted in his presence, which was very embarrassing for her. But to be fair, a few of those times Naruto wasn't even wearing a shirt, and sometimes she'd involuntarily caught him when he'd come out of the shower, prompting a nosebleed, and she only just moved in 2 days ago. It had always been her dream to live with her crush, but this was getting out of hand. She had to get a grip on herself before Naruto found her undesirable, if he hadn't already. Then there was the issue of their sleeping arrangements. When they arrived here 2 days ago, Naruto immediately offered to share the bed with her, prompting further teasing from Tsunade and a punch from Sakura for his perverted idea. She felt so disappointed, but she was happy she wouldn't have to wake up every day and embarrass herself further in front of him. She also forgot about Sakura altogether. She didn't miss her disapproving of the whole situation, and didn't Naruto have a crush on the pink-haired girl? So many things to think about, but the one that was glaringly obvious even to her was the fact that she hadn't even made an effort to actually ask out Naruto or tell him about her crush on him. It wasn't because of Sakura, but she was just too damn shy to ask him out of fear of rejection. The more she thought about her inability to ask out her long-time crush, the more she felt like an idiot. She could just ask him on it, and if he doesn't feel the same way, then she would know and possibly move on, but to who? No one has ever made her feel this way, no one. How could she possibly move on when he was her entire world, her universe? It would shatter her if he suddenly started dating another girl. She wanted to slap herself. She had the best opportunity that none of Naruto's admirers could ever have. She was living with him, for crying out loud, and all she can do is nothing. No, that will not stand this time. This was fate's way of telling her that it was time. This was her best chance, and Hinata had to swallow the lump in her throat and make her way to the dining room of the apartment. She had to admire this place. It looked way better than his original apartment. She spotted Naruto sitting up on the couch while rubbing his eyes. Looks like he just woke up. She mustered up as much courage as possible. "Good morning, Naruto-kun," Hinata greeted and silently cheered herself. She didn't stutter once. "Huh, oh hey Hinata-chan," Naruto greeted back once he was aware of his surroundings. "Naruto-kun, we need to talk," Hinata said seriously. It was now or never. "Sure, what's up?" Naruto asked, sensing her serious tone. "It's about us," she stated. "What about us, Hinata-chan?" Naruto asked confusedly. "Naruto-kun, I'm. Hinata cursed herself. Why couldn't she just tell him already? "Yes, Hinata-chan," Naruto prompted. He wanted to know what was bothering her. "Ill love," she couldn't finish before everything went black. "Hinata-chan," Naruto shouted as he caught Hinata before she fainted. She'd been doing that a lot lately. Naruto didn't understand girls much, well, a lot according to Sakura. Hinata was always so confusing, but these 2 days she was downright weird. She interacted with him as little as possible, and she would pass out whenever he was around, and he had to wonder if his very presence was a curse or something. He didn't know why, but sometimes when Hinata wasn't looking his way, he would look at her and stare, to the point where he had to be reminded by a laughing Kyuubi that he was staring too long. He hadn't forgotten Kurama and what she did. The seal she made was something impossible, and he wasn't dumb enough to think that was just dumb luck on her side. He asked her why she couldn't just make a seal that would free her from the mindscape, and she told him the seal that imprisons her is designed to absorb any countermeasures taken on it, so it didn't matter what counter seal or just use she made, because the seal would just swallow it up. Minato really thought things through there. Naruto apologized for her predicament, but she just told him it didn't matter, and he made her stay in the mindscape enjoyable. He felt so touched by her words that he ended up squeezing the life out of her. He shook his head and then took Hinata to his bedroom and put her on the bed. He admired her cute face for a little while and then made his way back to the living room. He stayed seated for a little while and was about to do his morning routines but was stopped by some knocking on the door. He made his way and opened it to see Sakura on the other side. "Hey Naruto," Sakura greeted. "Hey Sakura-chan, what's up?" Naruto asked. "Actually Tsunade-sama needs to see us right now," Sakura said in a serious tone. "But I'm still wearing my clothes from yesterday," Naruto whined. "No buts Naruto, come on," Sakura said. Naruto looked at his bedroom door nervously, then back to Sakura. "Okay, gimme a minute," Naruto said as he summoned his shadow clone. "Naruto, you still using that stupid perverted just you?" Sakura asked as she advanced on him. "No Sakura-chan. She's wearing clothes this tea." He was cut off with a punch on the face, sending him to the ground. "And you?" Sakura shouted as she punched the clone in the gut, expecting it to pop, but was surprised when the female clone doubled over looking like she was in pain. "Arg, what's your problem, you frickin' banshee?" shouted Naruto as she stood up and looked at Sakura murderously. "Wah?" Sakura asked dumbly. "That stupid clone was supposed to pop. TCH, so you like picking on people that won't fight back, huh? Well, you'll find I'm not a pushover," Naruto said dangerously as she stared daggers in Sakura's direction and took an offensive fighting stance. Sakura had to wonder if she was dreaming. A clone that didn't pop when it got hit. That was impossible, but to be fair, anything involving Naruto was impossible. She didn't know what to say. This was definitely a way to start up a morning right. "How is this even possible?" Sakura shrieked. "Naruto-chan, leave Sakura-chan alone," Naruto said as he got up from the ground. "Frickin' howler monkey," Naruto muttered as she made her way into the apartment. "Naruto, you her what?" Sakura questioned, waving her arms animatedly. "Naruto-chan, please look after Hinata-chan. Let's go see Ba-chan, Sakura-chan," Naruto said as he led Sakura away from his apartment. "But, she's real," Sakura shouted, confused by this. This was so weird. Naruto made her way to the bedroom and saw Hinata sleeping soundly. She wasn't as oblivious as her creator, and after skimming through Naruto's memory, she immediately felt sorry for Hinata. She was a very nice person, but her shyness was her biggest problem. If the Hyuga girl wanted to be with Naruto, then she would have to do better than what she'd been doing already. It was absolutely embarrassing to say the least. Naruto nudged Hinata softly and watched as the former Hyuga princess opened her eyes and then looked at her. "Hey Hinata," Naruto greeted with a smile. Hinata just stared at the girl. She knew this was Naruto's Waroke no Jutsu, but why on earth would Naruto turn into his female form, and wasn't he usually close to being in this form? Even the way Naruto was staring at her was different. "Naruto-kun?" Hinata asked, unsure. "Well, you're not entirely wrong," Naruto said. "What do you mean?" Hinata asked, confused. "I'm not Naruto, but I am his shadow clone Naruto said. "Why are you a girl?" Hinata asked, still confused. "Because I want to be," Naruto said playfully. Hinata was too confused to think too much on this, that she just kept quiet. "Naruto went to Ba-chan for something important and he left me in charge of your well-being," Naruto said after a pause. "Oh," was all Hinata said as she looked down and stayed silent. Naruto rolled her eyes. What was wrong with this girl? "Seriously Hinata, you'll never be able to tell Naruto how you feel if you keep acting this way," Naruto said with a frown. Hinata's heart stopped. Did Naruto really know what was going on with her? She couldn't. She was Naruto's shadow clone, so shouldn't that mean she inhibited Naruto's character traits? Even if she was a shadow clone, she should act exactly like the original Naruto, right? She had to make sure. "What do you mean?" Hinata asked. "I mean your little crush on him, that's what," Naruto said impatiently. How? Hinata was cut off before she could ask with a hand. Look, Hinata, Naruto isn't getting any younger and you not helping yourself with dodging every single opportunity you get to confess. What if someone else takes him, huh? What then? You'll have no one to blame but yourself and you'll end up living with regret, Naruto said to Hinata seriously. Hinata listened carefully to what Naruto said. She had to admit Naruto was nothing like Naruto, they were complete opposites. I don't know how to do it without fainting, Hinata said sadly. She tried this morning and even that backfired in her face. Don't push yourself too much and just start things slow. You need to get to a point where it will be comfortable to tell him how you feel without passing out, and it's pretty obvious that you in particular can't just rush in and tell him how you feel, but there's another way, Naruto said with a grin. There is? Hinata asked with hope. The spring festival is happening in a month and that will be the perfect place for you to tell him your feelings, but you have to start with asking him out first, and I know it's gonna be hard, but you have to keep in mind that you're not confessing your love for him yet but just asking him out. Don't worry about any competition for now since Naruto isn't exactly interested in anyone, however even he can't stay single forever, Naruto said. Will you tell him about my feelings? Hinata asked scared. No, Hinata. You're the one who loves him, Naruto said, and for the first time Naruto got a good response from Hinata as she smiled at her. Naruto was with Sakura and Kakashi in Tsunade's office. The lady herself hadn't arrived yet, much to the annoyance of the blonde teen. He hoped Naruto wasn't doing anything stupid right now, like he was the one to talk. Tsunade walked into the office and she wasn't alone, with her was one Tamari. We are all here as you requested, Tsunade-sama, Kakashi said. Good. I'm sure you've all become well acquainted with the ambassador of Suna, Tsunade asked, indicating to Tamari. Yep, you bet. Hey Tamari-chan, Naruto said as he flashed her a grin. Hey Naruto-kun. Why haven't you been visiting us lately, huh? Tamari put her hands on her hips and glared playfully at him. Ha 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 ha, I guess I kinda forgot, Naruto said as he rubbed the back of his head. Well, obviously. You were always the idiot, Tamari teased. So why are we here, Tsunade-sama? Sakura asked. I'll let Tamari explain the situation, Tsunade said and motioned for Tamari to begin. Well, we've got a bit of a problem in Suna, Tamari said. Well, whatever it is, it couldn't be worse than Akatsuki, right? Naruto asked and received a serious look from Tamari. We not sure yet, but we haven't ruled out that possibility, Tamari said seriously and received serious looks from everyone except for Tsunade. That's why I called you here. You are to assist the Sand Village in finding out what exactly is the problem there, Tsunade said. But what makes you think there's even a problem? Sakura asked. Because some of our shinobi were attacked by an unknown assailant, and this has been happening for a few weeks and lately as well. Trust me, if we could deal with this alone then I wouldn't be here in Konoha, Tamari said. Not far from Sunagaku was a building that seemed to be made completely out of sand. In the building were dark surroundings. Some sunlight penetrated through the building windows but not enough to lighten the dark area. Deeper inside the building stood a silhouette figure that resembled a female with long hair and wearing a cloak. Her eyes were glowing with a faint purple hue. Her demeanor seemed to scream power. I'm coming, sweetie. I'm coming for the both of you, the silhouette said from the darkness of the building.